I'll kick things off quickly. So hi everyone, my name is Ricky Sharma and I'm a GlobalWe board member. And I will be facilitating today's session with Sister Marilyn from Mercy Beyond Borders. So a big thank you to Sister Marilyn for joining us for today's event. After I introduce Sister Marilyn, she'll have a chance to give a brief presentation, and hopefully you'll have a chance to also ask some more questions and engage about Mercy Beyond Borders' work. There will be another session after this one. So this one will have about 15-20 minutes to chat, and then you all are free to move to another breakout room and see another presentation, and other folks can come in and hopefully see Sister Marilyn's second presentation as well. So with that said, I will turn it over to you, Sister Marilyn, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Ricky. I'm delighted to be with whoever is in the audience today. I see a couple of names, and would hope that you'll interact with Ricky on the chat or whatever if you have questions. But I am pleased to have this opportunity to share with you the work that I do with women and girls in 5 countries around the world. This is a typical scene. I've taken all the photos you'll be seeing here. A typical scene in South Sudan, where you see a cluster of girls at the entrance to their little village. These girls will never go to school. They will probably never get outside their village. They will have no awareness of the larger world, no understanding that they are equal to their brothers and fathers and soon husbands. And this is something we all know isn't right. Huh? Everybody deserves the chance to grow and be somebody and engage their gifts in changing the world. So 15 years ago, I started a small nonprofit called Mercy Beyond Borders. And we exist to empower these girls and women to change their own environments. We don't think we're going to do the change from outside, but we hope that we can give them the tools they need to make the changes over time. So now I'm going to try to go to the next slide. This is another picture of the environment in which we work. This is taken in one of the 10 refugee camps where we work in East Africa. It's in the middle of a dust storm, not unusual. And of course, it's the women who keep doing the work. This young girl, teenager, is carrying water back to her hut. And it's the women who do all the work in these places, all the tough work. I don't have time today to talk about the 5 different cultures and countries that we work in, so I'm just going to concentrate on South Sudan. I don't imagine any of you has ever been there. And actually, I wouldn't recommend that you go there. It's post-war, but even though the peace treaty was signed about 11 years ago, all the men kept their AK-47s. It was a 37-year civil war, so they know nothing about peace. They know how to do conflict. And unfortunately, the place remains very dangerous and conflict-ridden. So what are we doing there? We are working with only women and girls. We are working there because it is a place of extreme poverty, not just poverty, extreme poverty, as defined by the United Nations. And we are there to open opportunities for the women and girls to learn, connect, and lead. All right, so that summarizes our mission statement, which is forging ways for women and girls born into extreme poverty to learn, connect, and lead. And it's a long-term challenge. It's going to take generations. But this photo here kind of encapsulates what we do in South Sudan. This is a girl, a young woman now, a nurse, whom we helped to get an education all the way through primary school, high school, and nursing college through supporting her with scholarships and leadership training. And she's back in a village just like the one she grew up in. So you see the change that can occur with the gift of education. But why does it begin with education? Because it's the only intervention that we're aware of that can change the future of girls, right? And then they ultimately change the culture so that girls will have more human rights. These are all girls. They look like boys because they shave their heads for hygiene reasons and because they don't always have supplies like shampoo. Mercy Beyond Borders does not run any schools, but we find schools that are struggling and have potential and have a vision for educating girls. And we create the atmosphere, and through radio announcements and encouragement for girls' education, we slowly see that families are beginning to allow perhaps one girl from their family, never all the girls, but maybe one, to come to school. And so this is our pilot program. It now has 900 girls. It's the only girls' school in the country of South Sudan. And it's become like a magnet for girls and a safe place for them. And why do I say safe? Because actually, sad to say, human trafficking, we all know about that in the US. And usually we think about it as girls being tricked or kidnapped into sex trafficking, or boys into enforced labor, or whatever. But actually, the United Nations recognizes forced marriage as a form of human trafficking. And it is not just rampant in South Sudan, it is the norm in South Sudan that girls, when they reach puberty, and often even before, will be married by their uncles, who make the decisions in families, to old men. Why not young men? Old men, because the dowry that must be given by the future groom is cattle. And it takes years to amass a large herd of cattle. And a beautiful girl might go for, let's say, 100 cows. This is important because there aren't many banks in South Sudan, and wealth is in your herd of cattle. So if a family, let's say, raise your hand if you're a mom, got kids. Let's say you have 2 sons and 2 daughters. Your son wants to get married. How is he going to get married? Well, he can't unless you already happen to have a lot of cows. But there's a way for you to get cows. You sell your daughter in exchange for 50 head of cows. Now your son has those cows, and now your son can go ahead and give them away and get married. So the girls are used as a transaction for these necessary engagements, right? And it traps the girls. They have no choice in who they marry. They have no voice. They have no decision-making power. And in fact, when you ask Sudanese families what their values are, this is what they'll say. Well, God isn't on top, and then comes men, and then comes cattle, and then comes females. So given our understanding of human rights, this is just not tenable, to have, and a country will never develop if 50% of its social capital is not ever given the chance to go to school. So we invest heavily in girls' education and promote it. It doesn't always work. This is a picture of Najori, a beautiful young 15-year-old who knocked on the door of our school, our primary school, one day and asked to be admitted to school. Her backstory, which when I interviewed her, horrified me. She was married by her dad at age 10. And the old man that he married her to gave him a lot of cows, and the old man died. He was so old. So then the father turned around and married her again to get another herd of cows. And this happened 4 times before the age of 15. Then she finally said to her dad, I don't think I'm meant to be married. Please let me go to school. So the father was pretty happy. He had hundreds of cows. He said, okay, you can go enroll in school. So she came and she was enrolled as a first grader with all the little people. She was so happy. I mean, really happy to be there and learning how to read and write, how to hold a pencil, all of that. She was going to have a future. A month later, the dad came back to the school gate, this time carrying an AK-47 and saying, "I have found a fifth husband. I'm here to get you." And there was nothing we could do. The local authorities would err on the side of supporting the father. So she was taken away, and it really re-traumatized the whole school, all the children there, because they realized that even though this campus is the safest place for them in South Sudan, it's never going to be 100% safe. So that's what we're up against, but we do have many success stories. And in a place where very few families have ever sent a girl to school, we now have over 80 girls who finished university. I think that's a staggering achievement and one that we're very proud of. And this is one of our Sudanese dancing for joy on her graduation day. As well as focusing on getting the girls into school, we focus on developing their leadership skills. So every month we have leadership workshops, now mostly by Zoom or in smaller groups because of the virus. But it is really important, because if you take girls from a village where they have no voice and they think that they believe that they are lower than cows, they're not confident, right? They don't even believe, some of them don't even believe they're human beings. And so it takes a lot of interaction, a lot of new exposure to new ideas, and we bring in experts, whether it's on violence, gender-based violence, or claiming your voice, or telling your story, or learning public speaking. The leadership is a core piece of what we are doing while we educate the girls. So let me see. The amazing part that we see in South Sudan, and I say really amazing because this is not true in most parts of the world where girls get educated. There is no brain drain. These girls are going back, even if we pull them into Kenya or Uganda, because there are better universities there than in South Sudan, which is such a young and undeveloped country. Even if they're educated in Kenya or Uganda, they are, the minute they get that diploma or degree, they're going back into South Sudan to help build their country. So here we see a young woman on the right. Her name is Vina, and these are her relatives. This is the village she came from, and she is now back there as a nurse because another NGO, a non-governmental organization, built a clinic there. You can see it in the background, and she is now staffing that clinic. There are a lot of NGOs that build buildings, but there are no trained people to work in those buildings. So Mercy Beyond Borders, we see our mission as investing in these young women and girls so that they can develop their potential and eventually develop their country. It's fantastic work and very exciting. And the final thing after they've graduated and they've got a job is we engage them in advocacy. And here you see one of our other grads who also happens to be, I think, a midwife. On International Women's Day, which is, we know, is celebrated around the world on March 8th, she was elected in the refugee camps to come and speak about women's empowerment. And here you see her up on stage, a girl from a village, you know, mud hut kind of village, now speaking to thousands of people very confidently about the value of girls' education. It's really thrilling. So I would invite you to go to our website. It's mercybeyondborders.org, and just take a look for yourself. Once a month, I do a very short e-news online. You can sign up for that. You could like us on social media. You could invite me to speak if you belong to any groups that might be interested in women's and girls' issues internationally. We don't work in the US. My office is in California because I grew up here, but all of our work is overseas, and all of our staff are indigenous to each country where we work, except for the home staff here in California doing all the computer stuff. But okay, how am I doing on time?
You're doing great on time. I think we can shift over to some Q&A.
Some questions? Yeah, that'd be great.
For those folks here, feel free to raise your hand using the feature in Zoom, or if you want to type your questions into the chat, I'm happy to read them out loud. So, Sister Marilyn, we have a question from Julie Shapiro, who asks, where does the genesis of funding come from to enhance, regenerate, and build empowerment centers, be they schools, personal education, or other livelihood rescue?
Lovely question. Thank you for that. We solicit donations from individuals and DAFs, donor advised funds. Those are our primary sources of funding. Our budget is about 1.7 million per year, which is a pretty skeletal budget when you're in 5 countries. We have not scaled to tens of thousands of people because my belief is that to shepherd the journey that these women go through, many of whom have been abused and all of whom have no concept that they are worthwhile human beings with giftedness when they start out in our programs. We need to go deep with people. It's a process of inner transformation. We do not just say, here's a scholarship, goodbye and good luck. We say, here's a scholarship. You are now joining a movement that is eventually going to advocate for human rights, basic human rights in your country. And it's a long journey, and we're going to be with you every step of the way. So we have counselors and tutors, and we build libraries. We put a campus nurse at the school. We enhance the educational experience as well as protecting them from early marriage, which equates to early death in these places. South Sudan has the world's highest maternal mortality rate.
Got it. Thank you so much, Mr. Marilyn. So if anyone else has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. We have a small group, so anyone, if you want to unmute yourselves, you can also go ahead and ask that way. But I have a question for you in the meantime, Mr. Marilyn. I'd love to hear, how have the women and girls that you work with, how have they been able to offer any ideas or solutions to kind of expand or enhance the program's impact? And have any of these surprised you?
Great question too. We invite, let me say this, we introduce to all of our scholars the concept of volunteering. And I say introduce it because when you're living in extreme poverty, it takes every ounce of your energy and every minute of your day just to survive. But when you're on a scholarship, you can get your head above water and look around you. And so we introduce the idea of volunteering in your community to make it a better place. And so we don't tell them what they need to do. We just say, do it and then tell us later. They're doing amazing things. Many of them are tutoring younger children. Some of them are going back to their villages during the vacation weeks, talking to the local chiefs, which is a scary thing to do for a girl, about the value of education. Some of them are speaking on the radio about it. Others are visiting the prisoners. Many will take time out to help the elders back in their village, the blind, the disabled, those who can't, stand in line at the borehole to get water or carry it back to their hut. So they're doing all kinds of things which are already, even though they maybe don't have their degree yet, already bettering their community. And the community looks at these girls and says, wow, what's motivating them? They're different. This is different from when I was a girl. And then they find out it's because they're in school and they're learning new things, and it opens people's eyes. So the change, I think, is going to come from within. Does that answer what you were asking?
Yes, no, absolutely. And I guess maybe just to build on it, have any of them kind of, in their work or volunteering, have they kind of pushed you or made you sort of rethink kind of ways that you can make impact in terms of, when they get out in the community?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've introduced the idea of an alumni advocacy group. Again, that was something new to them, that they could actually change their country. And so they have, we had a 5-day workshop in which we introduced this and gave them tools of advocacy, things like that. And so they've split into geographic groups, and they're working on projects of their own, which they'll report back on at the end of the year as to how they are doing advocacy in their own particular settings. One of the core beliefs that Mercy Beyond Borders has is that we need to get beyond our personal comfort levels. We all have borders, psychological or racial or caste system or whatever it is. But if we stay inside that sort of cocoon, we live a comfortable life, but we don't change the world, right? So in South Sudan, they have a huge problem between genders, as I've explained, and also a problem between tribes. Among the different tribes, there's a lot of enmity. And so we encourage in these small work groups that are working on advocacy that they include members who are not from their own tribe. And that's unheard of. So we'll see how that goes. But it's, 2 steps forward, maybe 2 or 3 backward. It's a very difficult environment in which to work, very corrupt, very male dominated, etc. But that's why we're there. And we would love to become better known in the US and rally the troops, rally women around the world to engage with us, because that's the peer power, and we all have it.
Wonderful. So, Sister Marilyn, the first half has ended. So what we're going to do now is, so for folks who have been here and are interested in joining or seeing another organization or breakout room, feel free to do so. But on the flip side, we also have some new participants who've joined us for the second half. So, Sister Marilyn, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just start from the beginning and just quickly walk the new folks through
Absolutely.
Just a little bit about Mercy Beyond Borders. So back over to you.
Thanks, Ricky. Welcome, everybody. I'm Sister Marilyn Lacey, actually a Catholic nun, but the organization which I have founded and which I still lead is called Mercy Beyond Borders, and it is non-sectarian. It is not a religious organization. It is not a Catholic nonprofit. It is a regular old 501c3, because the places where we work by design are places of terribly extreme poverty. And those places are riven by conflicts. And some of those conflicts are tribal or racial or whatever, but some are also religious conflicts, which is abhorrent to me. And I did not wish to have an organization affiliated with only one faith tradition, because I think we need to have our eyes open and our hearts open to all traditions. And I certainly did not want to come in as a missionary type or colonial type person who thought she knew the answers. What we're trying to do through Mercy Beyond Borders in places that are very undeveloped, like South Sudan. These are the refugee camps where the Sudanese have fled conflict. The South Sudanese are now living 1.5 million of them in refugee camps in Uganda and Kenya. This is a camp in northern Uganda along the South Sudan border during a dust storm, not uncommon. And of course, it's the girls who are doing the work in the camps. So these are the situations in which we work: undeveloped, very poor, and mostly among females who have never been educated. Our mission is to work only with females, only in places of extreme poverty, and to help these women and girls learn, connect, and lead. So this girl that you see here, she's about 12 years old. She's carrying 45 pounds of water on her head, walking uphill, barefoot, on rocks that are so hot that when we drive around, we often have to do it at night, because the heat from the rocks will puncture the tires on our vehicle. So very, very difficult to be born a girl in South Sudan. But there is one way to overcome this vicious cycle of poverty, and it's by educating the girls. It's no secret to you. We all know this now. And we've been a nonprofit for 15 years. So we are seeing now the results of that long path of education, right? From kindergarten up through university. We see girls going from villages to become valedictorians, and from mud huts to medical careers. This is a picture of one of our grads who's now a nurse. She's actually visiting a new mom with her newborn child in that hut in the blazing heat. She's also bringing polio vaccines to this particular village. Now, she grew up in a village just like this, and now she is a nurse. So a dramatic transformation happening through the education we're able to support. This is a picture of the only girls' school in South Sudan, primary school. They look like boys because they shave their heads. They don't have enough resources always to have good hygiene or enough shampoo, that kind of thing. So they shave their heads and it keeps them healthy. So the primary intervention we make as Mercy Beyond Borders is to increase the access to school for girls. We do this in a number of ways by shoring up schools, enhancing them, and convincing the families that it would be beneficial to their family and in fact to their whole village to at least allow one of their daughters to go to school. And the women recognize this, the moms recognize it, but the decision makers are always the men in the families, and they see no point in sending girls to school because girls have no value in their future, believe it or not. Education, besides enhancing the girl's future, of course, completely transforming her life, will protect the girls, for the most part, from forced marriage at a very early age. So this photo actually is a picture of a classroom that has several dozen survivors of forced marriage, basically escapees who were forced into marriage so their parents could get a dowry of cattle, and who found it so intolerable or so unthinkable that at the time they were introduced to the old man who would become their husband, they actually decided to run away in the middle of the night through the forest, over the mountains, et cetera, until they could go where they didn't know where they were going. They just wanted to get away. And some of them then found out about this school by word of mouth and ended up at the school we support. Many of these girls, well, all of them are thrilled to be in school. And of course, they have no family supporting them, so we pay their full freight. They can never go home again. So they stay at school 365 days a year, even when all the other children, the other girls, go home for a vacation. We are not successful in every case. And in fact, this is a story of Najori. Want you to see what we're up against. Najori is 15 now, and she knocked on the gate of the school campus, very happy and asking if she could come to school. And we said, of course. So we let her in, we gave her a school uniform, and she became a first grader, even though she was 15. But when I visited, I interviewed her and found out the terrible backstory. Najori was widowed 4 times already. Her father married her when she was 10 years old to an old man who was very sickly. And he died a month or 2 later. Now, the father was pretty happy with that because he'd already gotten a dowry of cattle in exchange for his daughter. And he decided he would marry her again. And the same thing happened. And again, and again. So after being widowed 4 times and never wanting to be married to begin with, she said to her father, please let me go to school. And being a rich man now, he agreed. Okay, sure. I've got several hundred cattle. You can go do your thing in school. So she came to the campus. She was so happy, unbelievably happy, even though she towered over the first graders that she sat among. until a month later, her father appeared at the gate with an AK-47 slung over his shoulder. And he said, "I have found a fifth husband for you. You're coming with me." And there was nothing the school could do to prevent it. The local authorities sided with him being the father and having total rights over his daughter. So she left and became once again a humanly trafficked victim. The United Nations now recognizes forced marriage as a form of human trafficking, and we know how horrible that is. However, we have many success stories. In a country where no girls had ever gone to school at all, we now have over 80 young women who have graduated from universities and are back serving in their country. This is literally the first cohort of females to be highly educated in all of South Sudan. It's not just going to school, though. There's so much more involved because all of these girls have been oppressed, and many have been abused physically and sexually, and certainly psychologically. So we have monthly leadership trainings for all of our scholars, and we have hundreds of scholars in South Sudan and in the other 4 countries where we work. We do things like, you're looking at a picture of a professional journalist from Kenya, whom we engaged to come up into South Sudan and teach the girls about claiming their voice. Now, girls who are raised to believe that they have no voice are not confident enough. They don't believe in themselves. They don't think of themselves as important or potentially important people. So we have to train them in all manner of, basic human rights, which surprises them that they have the right to go to school. It surprises them that they have the right not to be abused. And so all of these steps in their personal growth are a very, very important part of our program. There are other organizations that just hand out scholarships and say, yeah, goodbye and good luck. But we don't do that. We have social workers and counselors and tutors, and we work closely with them at every step in their education. Because when you're really poor, when you're extremely poor, the slightest thing can cause you to fail and drop out, such as not having sanitary supplies, and you miss 3 days of school every month, and you start to fall behind and you give up. Well, so we supply that. Or not having a solar lamp, so you can't study after 6:30 at night, so we supply solar lamps. We do a lot of enhancements. We put libraries in the schools. We put school nurses on the campus, ways that will be the support system that their family is not because their parents haven't been to school. One of the things I find most amazing about our programs in South Sudan is that there is no brain drain. What you see in a lot of other countries is if a girl gets educated, she leaves to get a job somewhere else. And in South Sudan, this picture sums up the success and the commitment that we see in our scholars. This girl, now a young woman, her name is Vina Aleo, was born in this village. These are her relatives and neighbors, and she is now employed at the clinic that another nonprofit built. You can see it in the background there. And she's running this clinic for her family and neighbors, and she is beloved. And people just marvel that a female could become so educated and so professional that she is helping the entire village to stay healthy. So that's what we're about. And over the long term, we want our graduates like Vina and the others to engage in advocacy. There is no way that I, a first world white woman, can bring about change in these countries. But I can open the doors with help from people like you open the doors of opportunity, that they get educated and they become self-confident. They have agency, they've developed their skill sets, they have a professional job. They can become advocates now for change within their country, legislative change, cultural change, gender affirming change, I mean, whatever. And that is very exciting. It's a long-term project, but I think we're on the right path for it. So if you are interested in what we're doing, I say we're the best little nonprofit that nobody's ever heard of, and it's because we're working in these very remote places where you don't get a lot of media attention. If you'd like to help, go to our website. It's mercybeyondborders.org. We call it MBB. Sign up for the e-news that I write once a month. Like us on social media. Invite me to speak. I love to give talks and tell stories. We don't have time this morning, but and once a year we have a gala. If you are part of a company that has a budget for sponsorships of events, use your agency. Ask your company HR department or whoever it is that does that. If you could become a sponsor, you can find out details on our website. It's coming up in the month of May. Okay, I think we're done and we can have questions if there's time.
Yeah, I think we have just 2-3 minutes for questions. So if folks have anything they want to ask Sister Marilyn, feel free to raise your hands, unmute and ask directly, or type it in the chat. And so I'll kick things off, Sister Marilyn. So I found it striking, you mentioned one of your graduates is working in a clinic that was built by another NGO. And so I just wanted to hear your thoughts and perspectives, because obviously it takes a whole village, to raise a child, and we have to partner and collaborate with others to make that happen. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on why it's important to partner and collaborate. And are there any sort of dream partners you want to collaborate with or work with in the future?
Well, let me just talk about that clinic. It was built by the Islamic Relief Organization, and we are delighted to partner with them. I'm a Catholic nun, but the more traditional faith traditions we can bring in and cross the barriers that religions have unfortunately erected, the better off we're all going to be. We work obviously with all of the schools where we have our scholars, and we visit them regularly. We hear their stories. We rely on the back and forth, the information from the schools as to how better to support and encourage the growth of our scholars. We work with other nonprofits in lots of ways in all the other countries. It's a little bit hard in South Sudan because there's no infrastructure. To give you an idea, it was the last place that Google Maps mapped, last place on Earth, and it's still very sketchy. If you look on Google Earth and look for South Sudan, there's not a whole lot there. There's no roads, there's no bridges, a lot of rivers, so you can't get around from place to place. So collaboration, if it involves any kind of travel, even 10 miles away, becomes very time-consuming and expensive. But we are always looking for new partners, and we've established some in Haiti and in Uganda in the refugee camps. We're just beginning a partnership with a group that teaches the refugees how to do perma gardening, because the United Nations World Food Program is cutting all the rations to refugees. There's simply too many refugees in the world. And we're working with a lot of the refugee women in microenterprise and with many, many scholars, girls living in the refugee camps. We're bringing them to boarding schools so that they can study. So yeah, partnership is a big thing, and we're always looking for great partners. So bring it on.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Sister Marilyn, again, for your inspiring words and for sharing this wonderful overview of Mercy Beyond Borders. So on behalf of Harvard GlobalWe, we're really grateful to you for spending some time with us this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are.
Thanks a lot, and thanks everybody for listening.
Yes. And so now we're going to have a 20-minute networking session, so folks can make their way over to the lobby, and we can continue the conversation over there. And after that 20-minute networking session, we'll have a wrap up and closing remarks for the expo. So we hope you all will stick around. There's more fun to come.
Thank you very much, Ricky.
Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.